Kenny Pickett and George Pickens were special this year, but how special were they? We're going to break down some interesting stats on them, on when Kenny Pickett targeted George Pickens, the connection they were building, and some insight into just how high their ceiling as a duo who came into the year in the same draft class could be. Joining me today to talk about that is Josh Taylor of 93.7 The Fan and KDKA TV. We'll talk about that, his thoughts on the Matt Canada situation, and who are the Steelers pending free agents that they should work the hardest to keep. All that right here on the Locked On Steelers podcast. Going to be a fun episode. Let's get into it.
You are Locked On Steelers, your daily Pittsburgh Steelers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome to the Locked On Steelers podcast. I'm your host, Chris Carter, bringing you a daily dose of all things on the Pittsburgh Steelers. As always, you can find this show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button on the video if you enjoyed it. Hit the subscribe button on our YouTube channel to get all of our daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. We thank you for making us your first listen every day, because we're your team every day. And today's episode is brought to you by Prize Picks. Prize Picks is, of course, daily fantasy made easy. Just pick 2 to 5 players. If they score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, you can win up to 10 times your money on any entry. First-time users receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code Locked On. That's LOCKEDON. Locked On at prizepicks.com. Promo code Locked On. As I said, Josh Taylor's back on the show. We ain't had you since, I think, before Christmas, so it's been that long. How you doing, Josh?
It was good to get a breather. I won't lie. It's been a busy time. I think I worked probably the most over the holidays I probably have in years. So I'm like finally getting a breather. And like now that the season's come to an end, I kind of get to reset. So it's, I haven't been here in a while, but man, I've been doing a whole bunch of the other stuff. So it's good to kind of get a break for a change. And it gives me time to sit down with you and talk. So it works out the way it's supposed to.
I want to lead talking about two of the players I think Steelers fans were the most excited to see this year. That were their rookies, their top 2 rookie picks, Kenny Pickett and George Pickens. Now, their stats individually, may say something, but I wanted to look at their stats together. And if you look up on StatMuse and how George Pickens caught the ball whenever Kenny Pickett targeted him, they worked together to have 67 targets, 45 of those going for completions. That's about 67.2%. Which is 4 points higher than Kenny Pickett's overall completion percentage. That went for 683 passing yards, 4 touchdowns, and no interceptions. That's an NFL passer rating of 120.43 when Kenny Pickett was targeting George Pickens this year. Looking at those numbers, Josh, I think we all saw the highs and the lows this year. You saw George Pickens pull out some amazing catches, have some plays you wish he wished he could have back, but what rookie doesn't. And we also saw Kenny Pickett early on throw a lot of interceptions, 9 total in the year, but only I think 1 or 2 after the bye. If I'm looking at it, no, just one after the bye, and that was the one interception he threw against the Raiders. And yes, he was taking a lot of precautions, but you could see he was doing it in a smart way. What is your projection for the ceiling of these two guys playing together for the Pittsburgh Steelers?
I don't know if there is one right now, just from the numbers that you gave. Remember, this is a limited time period. I mean, it's not like we saw a lot of these guys together during the course of the season. We didn't see Kenny Pickett till game 4. And then he also got knocked out of a couple games, missed a game or 2. So there's a really limited sample size here. When you get a chance to see, a dozen plus games of these guys together, that's when you start putting together some even more concrete data as far as, okay, what could they really be? I mean, because you don't want to assume it's always going to be 17 games because injuries happen. It's the NFL. But if you can get 13, 14 games out of these guys and kind of, extrapolate some of those numbers, what it would be like if he had, say, somewhere between 90 and 100 targets or maybe even 100 plus, now you're looking at a much different dynamic. I mean, just when you do quick math in your head, you're going, that's a pretty good yards per attempt number. It's a pretty good yards per completion number. So that shows you that there were some impact plays to be made. And the thing that I like about this, and this is something that the numbers don't show you, is that as the season went along and these two got more and more comfortable together, those margins got bigger. Like the amount of yardage per play got bigger.
Mm-hmm.
They started being more explosive together. They started getting more rapport together. And I think that's a combination of two things. One, I think it's Kenny Pickett getting more adjusted to the game speed, getting more adjusted to the offense, and understanding exactly what he has at his disposal. I think another part of it is George Pickens getting that tree route expanded, because we saw a lot of him doing things deep, but then you saw him starting to get more involved in the short and intermediate game. You started seeing him lined up in the slot as opposed to outside. And I think that is incredibly dangerous, putting him in the slot and allowing him to make plays there. And it resulted particularly in 2 touchdowns of 2 of those targets, one against the Raiders and then one against Cleveland. So now you're talking about, a much bigger expansion as far as what they could do, not just what the numbers say, but what these two are doing as far as what they're learning and what's expanding their repertoire and how they're able to do more together. I think that's the fun part. So you ask me ceiling, and I don't know what the ceiling could be, because there's so much more to this group, to this pair, and this group and this offense in particular, as far as skill players, that they're still going to have more opportunities to learn. Because once again, it's year 1 with these guys. Year 2, they're going to expand the playbook. Pickens' route tree is going to be his route tree, I should say, is going to be a lot more, expansive. They're going to be able to do more with him because he'll understand more of what his role is, and he'll be able to do multiple things. So now it looks a little bit more, truncated now, but it'll be a lot bigger, and that ceiling will be a lot higher moving forward.
I want to go back to a clip that we've already played on the show once, but hey, it's the off season. Let's bring it all back. But I want to go back to a clip that we played before. Kenny Pickett after the Browns win, and the touchdown pass that he threw to George Pickens, and just why they're able to do more with him. Listen to how Kenny Pickett talks about that, and he goes right into what Josh is saying right now about the expansion of what George Pickens can be able to do just with more time in the offense. Here's Kenny Pickett in the post-game press conference after the win against the Browns.
Kenny, your touchdown toss to George Pickens seemed a lot like your Raiders touchdown toss, hitting the seam, going up the middle. How have you guys come together and found more ways to connect as the season has come along?
Yeah, I think we do a good job of moving around a little bit more, not keeping them in the same spot. The more we can move 18 and 14 around, obviously with Pat in there as well, it just creates some problems. So it was something that we saw throughout the week, watching tape. The Saints ran it, and I kind of was just like, hey, I think this, has a shot. So, we let George inside, had Tay on the outside there, put Pat at number 3, so that backside safety, he did exactly what we did, what we saw on tape. So it's pretty cool when you put something in like that, you get a call perfectly in the right situation for a touchdown. It's awesome.
So you hear it right there, Josh, and how he's talking. It's exactly what you're saying. They got to start lining him up in different places, and it's more than just the route tree too. It's forcing the defense to have to think about him differently, because when he's just lining up on the outside, you can just say, "Hey, outside guy, run with him at all times." But when you can move him to the slot or move him to different parts of the field, it forces other defenders to have to start covering him unless they want to move certain cornerbacks who just follow him everywhere. And then you might have a starting outside cornerback playing in the slot. And then you might be able to put, say, Damontae Johnson outside and put some more pressure, or, you could put Pat Freiermuth in the outside, or, next year maybe that's Calvin Austin. And you say, hey, you know what? Your third string corner or whoever you have over here is going to be guarding someone out of position probably. And that's going to put some stressors on you. And then you're still going to have to stop that guy right there. And again, if Kenny Pickett's sharper, I think it just gives them more opportunities to find ways to win there. I think the Steelers are already stepping in the direction that you're talking about. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I'm going to do something here, and let me give this is not a comparison disclaimer.
Okay.
We've seen this before with this organization. We've seen very talented receivers that developed into even better receivers. And one of the things that helped that development was the ability to move them around. Antonio Brown became so much more dangerous as a receiver when we were able to see him moved around the formation. When you saw him in the slot, when you saw him outside, when you saw him on the other side of the field, they moved him around. He was able to do different things. Hines Ward became so much more functional as a possession receiver, and especially as a third down guy who was incredibly reliable. When he was moved around the formation, you'd see him lined up outside. You'd see him maybe motion into the slot. You'd see him lined up in the slot. You saw him do a lot of different things as well. And all of those different, permutations help your offense as far as keeping defenses on their toes. Because like you said, now they have to try to figure out, hey, where's 14? Okay, now we got to worry about him here. Okay, well, where's 18? If 14's here, where's 18? And God forbid you stack them on the same side of the field. Now, you really got to worry about if you have them stacked to the same side, okay, who takes this one, who takes that one, and who's going where? It really opens up an entirely different chapter, an entirely different page of possibilities for what defenses have to defend. And you and I talk about this all the time. We talk about players and coaches talking about playing fast. You want to slow a defender down? Make them think.
Yep.
And there's a lot of defenders that I'm willing to guess, just even after one season, a lot of defenders do not want to have to think about where George Pickens may be at more than one point during the game, even at more than one point just to within a drive. Now we got to figure out where this guy is all the time now because he's moving all over the place. He can beat a short, intermediate, and deep. Now you got problems for your defense, for your opposing defense to think about, and your offense becomes that more dangerous. Because even if, let's say they do a successful job of trying to limit one guy, you got a whole bunch of other guys that are lining up with opportunities to succeed. So even if it hurts in one particular area, it still helps somebody else. That's the benefit that you saw when you had Antonio Brown and Martavis Bryant together. That's the benefit you saw when you saw Hines Ward and Plexico Burress together. When you have guys that can move around and you have defenses have to account for more than one person, now things become a lot more opened up, and now your offense becomes that much more dangerous.
I agree with that, but can they find ways to use them and be more dangerous? A lot of people think with Matt Canada, it's impossible. We talked about Matt Canada a bit yesterday with Alan Saunders. I want to talk to about him with Josh Taylor. Again, it's the offseason. We got time for this now. So I want to talk to Josh Taylor more about his thoughts on Matt Canada and if he can use some of his receivers and the whole offense in smarter ways next year that will result in better standings than they were in the offense this year. But before we do any of that, we got to talk to you guys about TurboTax because they're sponsoring this episode. And if you go to TurboTax, you don't have to do your taxes. You know why? Because you're going to meet with an expert who'll do them for you. TurboTax experts can relieve you from the stress of taxes and file for you so you can do not taxes. You can show your eyes things that are not taxes. Unpack a moving box of not taxes. Taste not taxes. Sing a not taxes lullaby. Hope not taxes sleeps through the night. Grab a saddle and ride not taxes into the sunset. With TurboTax, an expert will do your taxes from start to finish, ensuring your taxes are done right, guaranteed, so you can relax. Feels good to be done with your taxes, doesn't it? Come to TurboTax and you don't do your taxes. Visit TurboTax.com to learn more. Intuit TurboTax, full service products only. Video meeting while expert does your taxes required. See guaranteed details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. This episode is also brought to you by Ultimate Football GM, and that's the ultimate sports game that you can play right on your phone and be the GM to lead your NFL franchise to glory. If you want to lead a football franchise, you can name it. You can give it the colors, give it the city you want it to be in. Build the stadium. You can hire the right coaches, coordinators, trade players, make draft picks, trade draft picks, whatever you want to do. You can do every aspect of running an organization as a GM for 25 seasons in this game. You can't get fired if you do bad. I didn't. I won 19 titles in 25 years. Think you can do better? Go play Ultimate Football GM right now. Locked On Steelers listeners get a 100% free boost on all their stats in their franchise by just using the promo code Locked On when they enter the game store of Ultimate Football GN. And again, that's LOCKEDON, Locked On. Make sure to check it out today. And to download the game, just visit ultimate-gm.com or look it up in your app store on your mobile device. Again, that's ultimate-gm.com, ultimate-gm.com. Ultimate Football GM. Start your dynasty today. And when we do back-to-back ad reads, we keep it rolling. Josh, let's keep it rolling here and talk about this. I alluded to Matt Canada, and we talked about this yesterday with Alan Saunders. We went over the whole thing of the people who say, "Oh, he just calls the same plays," don't understand that's how football works. Everybody calls the same plays. You have a certain set of plays that you trust and that you run and you go with. And sometimes it's even more limited when you have a rookie quarterback with a rookie wide receiver with an offensive line that's still gelling together and a lot of young pieces. But I think people can agree the offense improved, but I think a lot of people would also agree it probably didn't improve enough to your liking and that you'd like it to be better. Points for on the season, Steelers finished 26th. Point in yards gained, they finished 23rd. They did finish 4th best in turnovers. They You look at their passing, they scored the least passing touchdowns on the season, had the 24th most passing yards on the year. Their running the ball did improve. They did have the 16th most rushing yards in the NFL, 11th most rushing touchdowns in the NFL. So there were, and that drastically improved as the year went along. But all those things point back to, needing to take steps forward. Where are you at with Matt Canada? Are you forward thinking in that the Steelers need to just cut ties right now and go get another guy, a veteran out there who can do more to help Kenny Pickett develop? Or do you think that there's something brewing here with Matt Canada on the Steelers staff?
Can I say both? Because
Sure.
I can make a case for both. And if you want to make developing Kenny Pickett your priority, then by all means do so. And I'd have the guy to do that. And you and I have had this discussion because we've talked about this name before. If you want to really tell me, and this is a collection of different things I'm going to jumble into one concept. If you want to tell me, okay, let's work on trying to develop this quarterback and maybe open up this offense more, making it more creative. At the same time, putting your money where your mouth is when it comes to coaching diversity in this league. And assuming the fact that he may not be considered for a head coaching job, because I know at one point he was interested in one, give Jim Caldwell a call. That's the name I would probably want to talk to. And it's not necessarily because of his experience as a head coach in two different places. It's not just that. It's about his experience developing quarterbacks. He did a really good job in Detroit developing Matthew Stafford. We don't talk as much about the early parts of Matthew Stafford's career when he had Jim Caldwell as a head coach. And another guy that does not get talked about a lot, but I read it in a piece. I want to say it was maybe the New York Times wrote it about his development of a quarterback. And it's one of those stories that you can't ignore. He helped develop Peyton Manning as a quarterback. That's one of those things that if you have that on your resume, that, hey, you helped develop one of the greatest quarterbacks of all time in his professional career, and he openly credits you for that, that sticks out. So if you're talking about that from that standpoint, if developing Kenny Pickett is your number one priority, fine. If you want a guy you feel fits that profile, Jim Caldwell might be the fit that you're looking for. Plus, there's a shared history there with Jim Caldwell, former Tony Dungy guy, Mike Tomlin, former Tony Dungy guy. And this is also worth noting, when Jim Caldwell coached in Detroit, who was his defensive coordinator for a while?
Was it Terrell Austin?
It was Terrell Austin. So there's a little bit of familiarity there. That might be the thing that makes sense. If you tell me that name, I'm listening to you. However, on the other side of things, I think there's something brewing here. I thought it took a while for it to get to that point. And I think you and I talked about what we expected to see from this offense. We've been talking about this for more than a year, Chris, how we thought this would be the opportunity for this team to really embrace the run game because it had been missing for almost half a decade. I've been saying this for a while. Todd Haley left, Le'Veon Bell left, and the run game left with them. But the emphasis is starting to return now, and you really saw that after the bye week. I think I flashed the world's biggest grin during that Saints game because they were doing everything. They were committing to running the football. They were running out of the pistol. They were using more play action. I'm going, this is what I've wanted all along. Let's get more of this. But I didn't want it to just be that. I wanted to see the success in the run game open up opportunities in the passing game. And we saw that. You talked about the numbers with Kenny Pickett and George Pickens. I don't think that happens if the run game isn't as successful as it was. Because think about how much the passing game struggled before the bye week because there wasn't as much success in the run game. But it allowed it to open up the passing game and give it more opportunity. And think about this. And developing your rookie quarterback, that makes perfect sense to me. I can't argue against that. It's a league that relies a lot upon offense and is going to have a heavy emphasis on quarterbacks. However, what's more dangerous to you? An offense where your quarterback is developed and he's the focal point, or an offense that has a capability to do a lot of different things because running the football can still be a priority. Your young quarterback getting more opportunities with the receivers. And by the way, Kenny Pickett's development, some of it's Matt Canada, but I think some of it is Kenny Pickett himself because he's a guy who just learns really quickly. He's a really fast learner, and that's really more of a credit to him. And it doesn't mean it's a discredit to the offensive coordinator. It's just the fact that there's maybe a better synergy there that we're giving credit to. So you could get still the capability of an offense that, hey, can run the ball pretty well. You got some young receivers that you can develop. For me, I think there's something brewing, but there's also some missing components there. You didn't have Calvin Austin all season long. The Chase Claypool experiment came to an end, and you traded him away, and your depth at wide receiver got hurt. It really took a big dent. So now you have the opportunity, fortify your offensive line, add some depth to your receiver position. You hope you get continued production out of your tight ends, because I think Pat Freiermuth, Zach Gentry, and Connor Hayward is a great group of tight ends to have. That's very, very diverse. They can do a lot of different things, and you can move them around and get a lot of results out of them. And you need that kind of group of tight ends in a Matt Canada offense, because he's going to use those guys a lot. You're going to need a lot of variety and diversity and skill set at wide receiver, because you need that in a Matt Canada offense. And you're going to need a really good offensive line, because running the football is the prerequisite in the Matt Canada offense. You and I talked about this a lot, because people bring up, the one good year at Pitt. It was just the year they happened to average 40 points a game and happened to run the ball for 225 yards a game. Those are huge numbers, and it happened that way for a reason. And it wasn't like just a couple of guys. You have 10 or 11 guys that scored touchdowns, multiple touchdowns on that team that year, because they were using different guys with different skill sets and allowing them to be successful. So if you have all the pieces that you need and all the components that make the system work, then the system's going to look better. The guys in it are going to look better, and the guy running it is going to look better. I don't think we've seen it at its full capability yet. So I will say, yes, if you can get a chance to find a guy that's going to help develop your quarterback, if that is your priority, sure. Give me Jim Caldwell, and I'll let you babysit my kid for the weekend. I won't have any complaints. But if you also want to have to the point where you're saying, look, we want to develop our quarterback, but you also want to have a really strong offensive line. You want to have an identity that's based around the success of your run game, and you have guys that can offset it, that can open up the passing game, that can beat you deep, that can beat you short and intermediate. Plus, you get your tight ends involved, and you got this whole melting pot of different skill sets that add to the picture. Both make sense for me. It's just a matter of what you prioritize. Do you prioritize just development of your quarterback, or do you prioritize the actual development and the variety of your offense in general?
I think that's a big part of it. I think, the priority is the big question the Steelers need to ask themselves. And, I brought up Jim Caldwell, among our list of guys that we talked about yesterday. And I think that, his track record is something that you could look at. But I also wonder if the Steelers are like, no, we're brewing something here that, like you said, it needs to have the run game going, and the run game got going this year. But what if we, if the Steelers are thinking, what if we just add, a couple really good offensive linemen who can be the anchors? And what if we got a guy in our GM office who's really good at finding those type of guys? And, they went and got Andy Weidel last year. Maybe that's what they are doing. And so again, we've heard reports or estimations. I wouldn't say reports. We've heard estimations by people who said, he's gone, or he's staying. Talking about Matt Canada. The more I hear things, the more I think that he is staying, unless they find like the ultimate candidate somewhere. And then they're like, Matt, sorry, but that's the guy. We want that guy to be the guy. But I also don't think it's necessarily a death sentence if he stays. So there's still a lot more to explore there. We'll hear a lot more things going on. Brian Flores was contacted by the Browns, among other teams. The Steelers were contacted about Brian Flores, among other teams. So we'll see how that plays out. But I just think that this Matt Canada conversation is going to be one that goes for a bit of time. And it probably won't stop until free agency hits and the Steelers have kind of made their decision whether or not he's staying or going. So lots to discuss there.
Yeah, my radio station has a Matt Canada watch already. And I'm sitting there going, we're doing this right now.
It's it's going to happen. And here's the thing: is whoever takes that offensive coordinator job after him, they better succeed really fast, because if they don't, everyone's going to be flaming them. But again, I think it's just about patience. And I said this on your radio station, 93.7 The Fan, before I recorded this show. Josh Roundtree had me on, and I said, first 2 years of Todd Haley, lots of complaints, he doesn't know what he's doing. They're never going to manifest. And then by his third year, everyone was like, oh yeah, this guy's great. He's not the problem. And then of course, then he was chased out of town eventually when they weren't doing enough. And then as soon as he was gone for about a year, people were like, hey, well, that guy wasn't that bad.
They miss that man now. They really miss that man now.
They do. But Matt Canada hasn't gotten there yet. Will he? Maybe that's what the Steelers are looking for in year 3.
It feels like I'll drop this one. I'm usually good for one movie reference. This is kind of movie/book reference. Harry Potter nerds, you'll appreciate this. The offensive coordinator position with this team is turning to the defense against the dark arts position. It just feels cursed. It just feels like the guy that comes in and had the position before in the exit and the reaction to the exit. It just feels unceremonious. But, I mean, you mentioned Todd Haley. People complained about Randy Fichtner. People complained about Todd Haley. There were people who complained about Bruce Arians.
Oh, there were a lot
of people. Say it out loud now.
Bruce Arians gone. No. People. Yeah. I remember that. That was
they changed their tune now, but they didn't like it back then. 10 years ago.
Back then, they thought that Bruce Arians was the problem. So you're absolutely right about that. But let's talk about who the Steelers should keep. Not as the coordinator, but the pending free agents. There's a long list of 25 players. We're going to go over the top ones that the Steelers should be looking at. We'll do that in just a minute. But first, we got to talk to you guys about our great sponsors at Prize Picks. Now, Prize Picks, of course, as I said earlier, it's just daily fantasy made easy. Instead of trying to pick, a whole lineup of players that you compete with thousands of people to win money, all you got to do is pick 2 to 5 players on a given day or a given weekend. And if you think you have a beat on their day in fantasy, all you have to do is guess right on them having more or less than their Prize Picks projected stat. If you get that right, then you're getting up to 10 times your money on any entry. And you're not competing against others. It's just against Prize Picks. You just need to beat the house. Prize Picks includes NFL, NBA, MLB, NHL, college sports, and so much more. Download the Prize Picks app today or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First time users receive a 100% instant deposit match up to $100 with promo code LOCKEDON. That's LOCKEDON, locked on, all capital letters, all one word, at prizepicks.com or by downloading the Prize Picks app. Back here on the Locked On Steelers podcast, Chris Carter, Josh Taylor. Let's keep it rolling. Josh, there's a list of 25 Steelers officially on the designated to be potential free agents list. The Steelers will have time to sign who they want to sign and keep who they want to keep before they hit free agency. Among the 25, I'm just going to go over some of the bigger names. Larry Ogunjobi, Devin Bush, Derek Watt, Cam Sutton, Terrell Edmunds, Robert Spillane, Damontae Kazee, and Steven Sims, James Pierre, Zach Gentry, and there's a bunch of others. There's Miles Boykin, there's Malik Reed. There's a lot of guys that you can find on that list. There's Marcus Allen, but where of all these guys, who are if you're going to name like a top pick, give me a top 3 that you are prioritizing that the Steelers must go get and keep on this roster for next year?
Top 3 guys I think they probably prioritize, if only for the fact that even if he's just a short-term Band-Aid, I'd like to see maybe Larry Ogunjobi or maybe another 1-year deal, because I think he's a guy that they could use for another year, even if it's just like I said, okay, just for a year till you get maybe – a guy you bring in with the draft pick or sign a guy maybe in a couple of years, or maybe you find Isaiah Loudermilk has developed maybe by the end of the next season, but at least you have Larry Ogunjobi to hold you over for that period. I feel like he's a priority. I feel like a guy like Cam Sutton is a guy you want to keep around because he's made some really, really quality plays throughout the course of the season, especially in that second half. And he made some plays as far as in the secondary in intercepting passes. And we talk about the secondary. I think they were really maligned throughout the course of the year. And then you get to the end of the season, you go, wait a minute, they left the league in interceptions? And they left more on the table. That's the thing that I think sticks out. There were a few that they left out there.
Yep.
I mean, they had 20 plus. They could have been closer to 30 if some of those opportunities go the right way. And I feel like Cam Sutton had a lot to do with that. I also feel like there's a guy that, this is tough because there's a couple guys competing in that third spot for me. But just for the defense's sake, if there was a guy, I'd like to see them stick around, because when he was actually healthy and on the field and part of this defense, and this defense had most of their key parts, I thought he made them look a little bit better, and that was Damontae Kazee. I thought when you had that full capability at safety, but then again, this is where he and Terrell Edmunds kind of go hand in hand, because and we saw this during that game against the Browns. You had that dime package they had out on the field where you had Terrell Edmunds as that second linebacker, but he's playing that dime linebacker position, and Damontae Kazee is back deep with Minkah Fitzpatrick, and he picks off a pass. And if you're a quarterback, you're going, wait a minute, I got to do it both of these guys deep now? I got to do it Fitzpatrick and Kazee, and now Edmunds is in the middle of the field. He's the intermediate guy. He's helping you as far as maybe defending a tight end or a running back. So it fits a much better opportunity for your defense to actually do more and limit teams better. So I feel like Damontae, Kazee, and Terrell Edmunds are kind of a 1/1, because if you keep one, the benefit of having the other makes it even better. And in the sub package where you need to operate a lot in this current NFL, this modern game, you got to have a good sub package. You got to be able to stop the pass pretty well. And I think this defense looks a lot better when you have both of those guys. And you and I talked about this in the first half of the season. I'm sitting there going, I feel like this defense is missing pieces. Yeah, they missed TJ Watt, and that's fine. And that's the easy part to look at. But they also didn't have Damontae, Kazee. If you look at this defense in the sub package, when you have that full complement together, just a full complement of safeties together, those three guys make this defense look a lot better on the back end. So I feel like there's three, but there's a couple honorable mentions. I'd love to see Zach Gentry stay. I think he's become a really important piece with this tight end group, especially as a blocker. I would love to see the opportunity to keep a guy. I'm trying to go down the list here. Even if you could try to get more out of Steven Sims as a returner and as a slot receiver.
I like that. I think that
Me too.
He made some really good plays. The catch he had against the Ravens over the middle, his ability, his speed, his athleticism, and his return abilities, all things I think are assets to this team.
Definitely valuable. And then there's a guy that I'm going to plead for the team to keep just for personal sentiment. Got to keep Christian Kuntz around, man. It's a Duquesne guy. He's a restricted free agent. He's not going to cost you a lot. He's a long snapper. He's a Duquesne guy. He's a local kid. For the Duquesne guy on the podcast, would love to see Christian Kuntz stick around. That's all I'm saying. Just making my little plea now, just for sending out all the Christian Kuntz vibes. that's the group of guys I'd like to see.
I see you working, sir. I see you working.
I got to lobby where I can, man. I got to get out how I live.
I hear you on that. I agree with your sentiments here. I think those are three really good names at the top of the list. To me, Cam Sutton is a priority. I think that he is a leader. I think that he is a role model for what you want cornerbacks to be, even when if they're not the fastest or the tallest. I think he's very much a Deshae Townsend, like a guy that you just want there. If they can get a cornerback one, a guy in free agency or the draft who they think is going to be the ace corner that can live on an island and just dominate and take away number one wide receivers, and Cam Sutton's the number two with that guy, I think you're in a really good spot with your cornerback room. I also think they should try to keep James Pierre. I think that he'd be relatively cheap. He's a good depth guy. You saw what he brought there, but absolutely. Shout out to Tony, our man. James, he was on the James Pierre hype train before everybody else. But absolutely top guys: Cam Sutton, Larry Ogunjobi, Damontae, Kazee. And I agree on Ogunjobi. You don't need a super long contract, just another year. Draft another defensive lineman. Draft a defensive lineman. I'm saying that louder into my mic because I think that needs to be an emphasis this year, so you can have a younger guy that pairs with Leal for the long term.
I'm crossing fingers for Jalen Carter. I know it won't happen. It's just like my Jordan Davis wish list from last year.
Three.
Like I'd love to have a guy like that. I know it's not going to happen, but I can dream. I can have a reason to pray for him.
I'm telling y'all, as a guy that covered him, just like I said, I talked about y'all about covering Kenny Pickett. Look up some Kalijah Kancey highlights.
There you go,
bad dude.
There you go. And that's what I'd like.
He's smaller. He's not a nose, but he is an evil man when he's going to work. And I think that Pittsburgh Steelers fans would get behind him just like they got behind Kenny Pickett as a guy to play for the Steelers. But there's lots of things that they could consider there. I do agree those are priorities. I also say Terrell Edmunds needs to be on the list. He's a very good player. He's a guy that wouldn't cost you too much. He's a veteran, and he's still like 26? He's still
really young.
He'll be 26 next year. Like with what? 6 years of experience, like
exactly.
What you take that and you run with that. You don't, and that way you don't have to invest too much more money into your safety room, too much draft capital into your safety room alongside Minkah Fitzpatrick.
And I think what counts a lot for that is you mentioned Minkah Fitzpatrick. Minkah Fitzpatrick loves playing with Terrell Edmunds.
Yep.
Loves playing with him. The guys in that room love playing with him. The staff really like him. And he's one of those guys. Remember a couple of years ago where Terrell Edmunds was like the most maligned guy on the defense that wasn't named?
I remember.
Wasn't named
Artie Burns.
It was named Devin Bush. Because it was like Devin Bush was one and Terrell Edmunds was like a distant second. This is a guy who in the past couple of seasons, and if you're still harping on Terrell Edmunds, you're not really paying attention to what he does. I'm gonna have to call you out on it. I'm gonna have to pull your card because he does a lot more in this defense that doesn't really get noticed because he does a lot of I'm going to use a hockey analogy. He does a lot of dirty, greasy type deals. He's more of a mucker and grinder in that position at strong safety because when you have a guy like Micah Fitzpatrick that you know is going to be on your back end and you know you don't have any worries with that guy back there, or when you get into that sub package and you know you have Micah Fitzpatrick on one deep half and Damontae Kazee on the other deep half, and you don't have to worry about that. Terrell Edmunds can be in that dime backer position and make plays there and still have a pretty strong role in coverage. All of that stuff comes together and it makes you feel a little bit more comfortable knowing that he fits what your scheme needs him to be. That's the important part because we can't keep talking scheme on the offensive side and say, well, the scheme is failing here and not talk about how the defense has guys that fit the scheme on their end, and he's one of those guys.
Absolutely. We'll have a lot more time to talk about that too in the coming months when they make their decisions of who they want to keep. So stay tuned with that here in the Locked On Steelers podcast. And we'll certainly have Josh Taylor back because he's the man whenever we get him to talk. He's the man all things sports too. He's not just a Steelers guy. He talks everything. Josh, thanks so much for coming on here. Let people know they can find you, follow you, get more of your work.
Social media, pretty simple. Josh Taylor HD. Radio side, 93.7 The Fan, 93.7thefan.com, or on the Odyssey app where you can listen to this podcast. And odds are I'll be on this upcoming Tuesday. I believe that's the 17th of January. Hoping to have Chris on. We'll talk a little bit more Steelers there too, and we'll keep it rolling there. TV side, CBS Pittsburgh, KDKA.com, mostly Fridays and Saturdays. So sure you find me there.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Josh, for coming on the show. I'm Chris Carter, host of the Locked On Steelers podcast. You can find the show on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, Odyssey, and YouTube. If you're watching this video on YouTube, hit the like button of the video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this YouTube channel to get all of your daily Monday through Friday episodes, as well as our bonus content. And if you give us a 5-star rating with a positive comment on Apple Podcasts, you get a special shout out at the end of the show, just like this person who gave us a 5-star review. We have Demon Eater who says, great show. I love getting all the information I need to stay up on top of of the season in one place. Thanks for keeping me company while I work nights. Thank you so much for your 5-star review, Demon Eater. If you want your shout out at the end of the show, give us one on Apple Podcasts with a positive comment. We'll get you the shout out just like we gave it to our friend here. Thanks again for Josh for coming on. Back tomorrow, breaking more things down on your Pittsburgh Steelers as we get through the week and start looking forward to Wild Card Weekend and what teams might do some damage in the playoffs. We'll see you then.